Hello and welcome to Supermiata. Today we are going to take a look at Vegas. This is a conversion. This was an S1 Supermiata race car for a couple years. That was a class in the Supermiata series where we were allowing turbos and big wing. We never got a lot of participation, so we decided to convert it over to enduro, putting a K swap in it. It's got a K24 Z3 motor, courtesy of K Power Industries. It's got a Quaife sequential transmission. That's a dog box, and a few other little changes. It's mostly the way we ran it in S1 with just those two changes. So obviously it's not done. It's still being built. But I'm going to show you where we are with it currently. Say hi, Eric. That's Eric, logistics guy. He makes sure you get all your parts. What's it?
I'm working hard right now.
Oh, there's no jet skis. That's a jet ski. He loves jet skis.
That's going to be our next product.
a new 949 Racing Supermiata jet ski. And that's Sonny, our logistics manager. They build Zetas. We had a little delay in production with their Zetas for a while. Normally we have them all in stock, but we were short for a while, so we're catching up on Zeta orders, and there are Zetas everywhere. And that's Kaiko. We're going to do a separate video on our NC project car, but that deserves its own video. So anyway, back to the Vegas. Oh yeah, let me show you the paint. Let's see if this comes up. It's a Bass Boat orange. It's a kind of a custom color we did. I did orange flakes in retrospect. I think I should have done silver flakes, but there you have it. So we decided to go with the K24 Z3 Swap. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Z3, it's a very similar motor to the K24A2 in the TSX. But I think it makes a tiny bit less power stock, but the main thing is it has the manifold built into the head. See that kind of big bulge on the side of the head there? That's actually the runner, and it's just got this one big piece that comes off. So it's much easier to package, and basically you don't have the cost of the header. This downpipe, it costs a lot less to make than a header, and it also takes up less space. And the key thing for us is it allows us to use the stock subframe. I didn't want to have to go to a tubular subframe for this. So this car has a cage built by TC Fabrication up in Milpitas. You see we did braces out to the shock towers in this. It's got Xida Race singles on it. I think we run 1,300, 600 spring rates on this. We used to run 1,100, 500, but we found as you add grip, you need a little bit more rate. So we've been running, I think, 13.6, and that's a pretty good combination. If you've got a 245 with a Super 200, you're weighing around 2,300 pounds, and you've got some downforce. Downforce meaning we run a 5-inch splitter. Later videos we'll have the front end. We'll show you the splitter and everything goes on the front of the car. And then we run an APR GT250 wing in there. That's got about that's a 2-dimensional wing, so it doesn't have the curvature in it. Say curvature, I'll show you what. We have a separate video, an old video about 10 years ago about the difference between 3D and 2D. But see, that's the same curvature all the way across. That's about a 10-inch cord. There's a whole bunch of really good wings on the market, including some full carbon, some fiberglass, and some aluminum wings. So, but anything that's set up like that, you're going to want around 1,100 to 1,300 front springs and 500 or 600 pound rear springs. Give us a call, talk to Ed in our sales department, and he'll walk you through getting your spring rate set up if you're curious about that. So we're doing drive-by-wire. We decided not to do the cable because it's got the sequential transmission. We want to be able to do basically flat shifting, which is easy even with the cable shift, but for auto blip downshift where you just push the lever forward and it blips the throttle for you and drops into the next gear, you need drive-by-wire. So we're running a Haltech 1500 ECU so that we can run the drive-by-wire. And otherwise, this is basically a junkyard motor. This one we paid around $600 for. Sometimes if you're patient and you really prowl eBay, you can find these for as low as like $300 or $400, but kind of $600, $700 seems to be the going rate. And these motors, typically when you get them, they have perfect compression, perfect leak down. They're just in great shape, and they make great race motors. I think stock rev limit was like 7,400, and I think people rev these to 8 all the time on a bone stock motor. As long as you don't go too crazy with the over revving, you're not going to hurt them. So really robust, inexpensive motors with the K-Power kit. We're using our own 3-inch exhaust in this thing, and yeah, it's a stock engine. We're actually going to detune these. These will make on E85, the Z3 with their manifold, with the K-Power manifold. I think they make, I want to say like 210, 215. Somebody, you know, post in the comments and correct me on that. I'm just kind of ballparking it, but I think it's what they make when they're tuned to the ragged edge. We're actually going to run this on gas, so we can get better mileage for endurance racing, and that'll allow us to also our sending unit. We don't have our electronics package fully installed yet, but we're going to use what's called a capacitive sensor in the fuel tank. John's doing the new wiring harness for it, but we're going to use what's called a capacitive sensor. It's like they use in aircraft, and essentially it's a solid state. It's like a rod that comes down into the fuel tank, and it measures the fuel level. So instead of a float going up and down, you've actually got this basically this rod goes through with the wire inside of it, and it measures the resistance across the fuel. And but those capacitive sensors only work with gasoline. They don't work with corn. So that's another reason to go to gasoline, but mainly just for the fuel economy, so we can get more minutes on track for a tank full of fuel. And because of that, we'll detune this. And this car, in most the endurance classes we'll run it in, we can run it in Champ Car EC, and we'll be able to run I think Lucky Dog mainly out here on the West Coast, and there's a few other series out here we can run in. But the car with 215 horsepower, the way we have the car set up, it'll actually be probably too fast, because it'll be nearly as quick as the BMWs in a straight line, but way faster in the turns. So we'll actually have to detune so that we don't get dinked. You know, in budget enduro, there's such a thing as being too good, too fast. So there's a bit of gamesmanship and sort of self-imposed balance of performance to make sure that you're somewhere near, you're competitive, but you're not the fastest car on track. So so that's what we'll do. And of course, we can always run 85 and put a high power tune just for track days and for other stuff. But for the most time, we'll be running it, I think, probably about 180 horsepower in order to keep the car from being too fast. So what else we got here? That's the K-Power oil pan. We pretty much use the standard K-Power kit. We had ideas about modifying it. We just decided to go with their standard kit, just the way it comes out of the box. Here's the bottom half. You can see they've got it tucked really nice. Look how that oil pan sits flush with the subframe, and then the crossover pipe barely sticks down maybe a -1/4 inch. So it's a real good clearance there. And this, you can see, show you the Quaife. How good a video shot can I get up in there? So that's the Quaife QBE60G 6-speed sequential transmission, which we've run quite a bit before. And then it's got that shiny silver bit there. That's the K-Power adapter to the Miata bolt pattern bell housing. This bell housing is actually made by Quaife, mates to their transmission. What else we got on this? We don't have the brakes installed yet. This will have our BX1175 big brake kit with our ducts. Normally it has ducting up here. It's all been torn apart for the engine swap. We're using a 54, I think this is the 54107 sway bar. That's the, let me think here. No, I take that back. That's a 54106 front sway bar. This is the big 1 1/4 racing beat, which we ran when we were doing time attack. We'll probably pull this back off and go back down to the 54107, which is our preferred car for most Miatas that run 245 treadwear, 245 with 200 treadwear tires. Here's the Xida Race coilovers with the billet mounts. Our new 863 bushings installed. In fact, there's a sneak peek of the Zerk fitting. You can see that there. That's go to our website to learn about the 863. That's basically a bronze insert inside of the urethane, so these move really freely with low friction, and that's the standard Zerk location. We have an FAQ on our website that shows all the Zerk locations to give you some guidance on where to put those in. That also comes in instructions with our new 863 kit. This doesn't have our rack spacers on it, but we have some rack spacers that we'll have available pretty soon. We'll be able to raise the rack up and improve the bump steer characteristics. That'll be a product that we'll have pretty soon. What else? This has yet another product, many secret products. So this piece here, this is not factory. This is a part of a kit that we're going to be releasing before too long, a couple months away. It's basically a bolt-on brace that goes across the front of the engine. It clears the BP and it clears the K-swap motors, and it basically ties the two frame rails together because this has been cut out. Normally there's a big steel piece here, and that helps to box in the front structure. So when you remove that, the two ends of the frame rail, this can kind of flex a little bit relative to the other side. where it normally wouldn't with the brace complete. So to box the structure, basically to replace the box, we put this real big burly brace that goes in here, and that'll be available as a kit. It's not a bolt-on kit. The brace itself bolts on. You can unbolt this for motor service, but the brackets themselves, actually, it's a steel piece that needs to be welded onto the frame. So you might ask, well, why do we cut this out? Well, it's for airflow. Basically, your radiator sits right there, and normally this big piece of steel that goes across here blocks airflow. And if you've got an intercooler, it's particularly troublesome because you've got an intercooler here, and that also blocks the radiator. So to get that airflow up to the top of the radiator, which is normally occluded, we cut this out, and then we build a plastic sort of a duct that goes straight back to the radiator. There'll be pictures of that, more videos as we go on. These headlights are OEM shells without the emitters in there. These will come out. We actually have another set of headlights that go onto this that have the OEM MB2 lens, but everything behind is all gutted, and there's a row of really powerful LEDs in there, so it all fits within the stock profile, so there's no additional aerodynamic drag, but it's crazy, like 20,000 lumen LED lights, and the way we have them oriented, they're not all pointing straight. They're actually individual elements that are kind of fanned and angled out like this, so that there's basically effectively really bright cornering lights, which is a pretty cool deal. Pretty cool deal. These are hubs from Miata hubs. These are pretty much the go-to hub for Miata race cars. If you're allowed to run these, you want to run these. Now, these don't have the low drag of like the hubs you see on spec Miatas, way more drag, but these last forever. There's a huge difference. The main reason we do these, aside from having much better bearing life, is that this flange is way thicker. So what we found is that the OEM hub flanges, they flex quite a bit, and it actually creates pad knockback. So when your wheel's attached to here, the hub flange here, the actual hub on the OEM hubs, it'll actually flex a little bit, and since the rotor's attached to that, it flexes and basically pushes your pads back and forth, so you get a lot of pad knockback. Put these hubs on, and the hub knockback is basically gone. Even, like, it doesn't even matter what brake you have. You have a quote-unquote flimsy caliper. It doesn't matter what caliper you have. The pad knockback basically disappears when you put these bad boys on. So, but the other side is that these things last. You can run, you know, 2 25-hour races back-to-back with these and not have any problems, where the OEM hubs basically usually won't do that, even if they're blueprinted. So there's that. What else we got? Let's roll around to the back of this car. It's currently got some 11s left over from the last event we did. That was a time attack a couple years ago, but this will have, for endurance racing, it'll have 10s with 245, you know, Hankook RS4s or whatever 245 we're allowed to run. Back here is all pretty stock. This has a 3.9 with our Supermiata tuned OS Geekin in it. These are drive shaft shop half shafts. These are a lot burlier than the factory half shafts. If you're running stock power, the factory half shafts work fine, but if you run a lot of power, back when we were running 450 horsepower through this thing, the stock tripods could sometimes wear, and they basically Burnell. You dent the tripods, and it would make these things stick. So instead of being able to slide back and forth, they'd get stuck in one spot. And what would happen? It would pull the half shaft out of the past the circlip. It's in the diff. So if you've ever had a high power Miata and it keeps pulling the drive shafts out, that's why. You've basically dented your tripods, and you take your stock drive shafts, throw them in the trash, and get some DSS ones or somebody else to build you some custom half shafts. That only happens when you have crazy power, when you've got like 300, 350 plus pounds torque. If you have that and you keep popping these out, that's the reason why. We use the stock braces up here. That's actually nice because it boxes in this structure. They're taken out now for service, but that's what we run there. We run OEM sport brakes. These are actually some ancient Goodwin V4 DBA rotors that we've been hoarding. It's a two-piece rotor, but it's basically the same dimensions as the OEM sport brakes. But OEM sport brakes work well with 1175 fronts. What else have we got here? That's our interior. Let's go around to the other side. We might have some other cool stuff here. Oh yeah, rain light, FIA rain light, because FIA rain lights are cool. You notice we had a video a year or two ago with some duct fans here, and we actually had a diff cooler and a trans cooler, separate pumps and oiling systems. We actually took those out. What we found in anticipation of big power, we thought we were going to need all that cooling, and it turns out we didn't. We never turned the fans on. It would overcool with the fans on. So we took that system out to make the car light. For endurance racing, making the car light is a good thing. We found we still get good temps. The Quaife basically doesn't run as hot as the OEM 6-speed, and the OEM 6-speeds, as you know, when they get hot, they misbehave. But since we're running the Quaife, we no longer need the transcooler, and the diff actually doesn't run that hot either. So what do we got here? This is, I think we've already showed most of the stuff in the video. This is part of the cage. We can change the height of the steering column in this car. Uses a quick release. We're gonna have our own Supermiata 949 Racing quick releases, very similar to this, but with a little different bracket. But they'll be fully compatible with the other, basically Works Bell replica quick releases, the ball lock quick releases that are on the market. Those will be available on our site in a little while. We use an OMP HTER 400. 400 refers to the width of the wings, which is very narrow. Usually, most aftermarket seats, FIA seats, these wings are about 500 millimeters apart, 5 to 520, and this is full 4 inches narrower. And the big thing is, you notice here, it fits inside of the cage. You look at the main hoop, how this comes around, see how the wing is inside? It's pretty common to fit inside of the hardtop, which is right about here. This is about as wide as you can make the main hoop. And then if you use a standard Miata seat, or any actually FIA seat with the 500 or 520 millimeter wing, the wing is out here. So it's basically sticking out and hitting the hardtop, or it's hitting the door, it's hitting everything. So these 400s, this is one of the few seats that'll fit a full-size adult that has a really particularly narrow wing. As a nice benefit, basically helps to hold your helmet so a little bit narrow in here. And the seat is still wide enough for, you know, a decent sized dude. I think it's about equivalent of about a 16-inch width across the bottom, which fits a pretty good sized driver, and still snug enough for us skinny guys. All the guys on our team we're all skinny drivers. What else? I think that's the bulk of it. I could kind of, oh yeah, this has I think these are fiberglass or carbon doors. I forget. These are, I don't even remember. I think these are fiberglass doors. I think these were made for us by Xida Racing. Pretty sure those were. Or they were carbon made by Lightyear in Australia. I don't remember. These are fiberglass widened fenders. These were made for us by Renderos. That's right. These were Renderos Racing made. They're about, I think, 35 millimeters wider than stock. So this will just fit a 275 tire, just with a 10-inch. And then the flares on this was done by TC Design. These are basically steel flares, but these are designed to fit also a 275 on a 10-inch wheel. So for 245, we've got a little bit of extra space in there, but it's nice to have that extra clearance. And you see, it's a knife edge here. It's really, really thin, and this is all cleared out, so there's a lot of extra room in there. So you kind of can't tell it's got flares on it. I mean, you'd have to be comparing it to a stock one. Yeah, I think that's about it. We'll do another video in probably about another month. We hope to start this thing up in about a month or so and start dyno tuning. Oh, brakes. You probably hear, I missed that. Somebody's gonna ask about that. That's a tilt and pedal setup. Yeah, I guess I need to add that to the video. That's a tilt and pedal setup. That's the front and rear masters, and then the clutch master. That's a brake line pressure sensor, so we can data log brake line pressure. And then let's go show the pedals. Everybody is going to want to look at the pedals. So that's the pedal setup. This is a top mount. So you can have them where the pivot is down at the floor and they mount at the floor. There isn't really enough room in a Miata unless you're a really short driver. I'm a tall guy, so I needed to run the pedals closer to the firewall, so we did a top mount. That is not bolt-on. That is a nightmare installation to do, for the fabrication. The standard balance bar doesn't really work that well. It doesn't fit, so that's really tough. We're not going to give you instructions on that because it was a nightmare to install those. But now that they're in, they're awesome, but it's really difficult to do. If you're doing a boosterless, you can modify the OEM pedals. I think a few people have done that, and go on miataturbo.net, and there's, I think, a couple guys who have successfully done boosterless with the factory pedals, but typically you have to change the leverage ratio of the stock pedals to get that work boosterless, or you can just go with these. The nice thing about these is you have a lot of adjustments. You notice the height of the brake pedal there? That doesn't mush down. Like the factory pedal, it drops down, you know, like an inch before anything happens. With the boosterless setup, that moves maybe 3/8 of an inch. It's completely rock solid, like you're driving a Porsche or a GT350 or something, rock solid pedal. And the clutch pedal, with the way we're setting this up, you actually only use this to unload it from the trailer and drive around the pits. Once you're on the track, you never touch the clutch pedal because It's flat shift, so you don't need to use the clutch to shift, upshift. And for downshifting, you just put your foot on the brake and slap the shift lever. It'll automatically blip the throttle. Again, you don't need to touch the clutch. So it's basically two-pedal driving. So you drive with your left foot on the brake all the time, or hovering over the brake once it's underway. So anyway, it's kind of a, oh yeah, another thing. Gosh, I'm forgetting now. Electric power steering. This is electric power steering from, we got this kit from the guy in Vegas. Sonny, what's the guy's name in Vegas? Sammy Valafar? And what's the name of his company there? It's E-Auto, E-Auto something or other?
Something warehouse, I forget that.
Oh, E-Wholesale Motors. That's what it is. E-Wholesale Motors. That's what it is. Yeah, Sammy Valafar in Vegas. He actually was acting as a distributor for these guys. I think there's actually a website. There's something like Electric Power Steering or EPS or something like that. Google that, and you'll find it. This is out of a Chevy Equinox, I believe. And it actually comes with a little controller so you can change the amount of boost, but it's electric power steering. Anybody who's ever run the depowered rack with 245s and extended lower ball joints knows that you have so much caster that the car becomes really tough to steer at low speed. At high speeds, it's still pretty heavy, but anything below about 40 miles an hour doing hairpins or just pulling on the paddock, the steering, it's miserable. And it's doable. But what ends up happening for endurance racing is you get tired. I know some people are telling me, going to tell me I'm a wuss, but if you've ever done an endurance race with 245s and ELBJs, you drivers, you know what I'm talking about. The steering is mighty heavy, and it would be nice to make it lighter. And I didn't want to do the standard power steering, A, because we're using a different engine, and B, because I didn't want all that power steering fluid in the car. It's highly flammable, it's like crazy flammable. So EPS was the solution, and also that now allowed us to, through the CAN bus, basically change the amount of boost we have. So hopefully that'll work out the way we hope it'll work. Okay, now I think I'm well and truly done, and we'll have a new video out in probably about another month or so once it's all put together and we're starting track testing. All right, see you at the track.